Good evening, everyone. I am so excited and honored to welcome you to Echoing Green's 2021 Social Innovation Challenge. My name is Tiffany Thompson, and I'm the Senior Director of Global Partnerships and Equity at Echoing Green. For 35 years, Echoing Green has identified transformational leaders at an early stage. We've invested deeply in the growth of their ideas and leadership and connected them to a broad ecosystem that will support them long into the future. Today, I'm joined by the founders of 13 incredible and dynamic organizations. You'll learn more about them and their bold visions for change during our pitch competition in just a bit. This is our fourth annual Social Innovation Challenge, and we're so proud to continue this partnership with Barclays. Last year, we held this event virtually amid a global pandemic that disproportionately impacted communities of color and a collective reckoning with racial justice across the United States. This year, we are coming together recognizing that the pandemic and the issues that it exposed and worsened are not new, nor are they over. However, this is a time when people are more broadly paying attention to issues that have long been a concern for Echoing Green and the innovators we support. Today's programming features a group of 13 leaders of color who are driving transformational systems change through economic justice, narrative change and representation, and youth development and empowerment. These entrepreneurs have gotten to know one another over the past month through hands-on community building and strategic advising sessions with Echoing Green and Barclays staff. At this time, I want to give a special thanks to the Barclays team for their partnership on this series, particularly John Kenny, Oksana Stasiuk, Debbie Goldfarb, Mark Thane, Azara Mason, Erica Frey Seeley, and Talks Satande Peters. We could not have pulled this off without all of you. Now, if we were in person at this time, many people would be clapping, everyone would be saying cheers. So I would love it if you could put some emojis, some claps. Let's get some engagement in the chat so we feel like we're still in person. But at this time, I'm really thrilled to be joined this evening by Ray Dempsey. He's the Group Chief Diversity Officer at Barclays. And with that, it's my pleasure to hand it over to you, Ray.
Tiffany, thank you. I have to say, if you're in charge of the soundtrack at Echoing Green, you're doing a good job. I was enjoying those few minutes as we were preparing to begin. Thanks again. My name is Ray Dempsey, and I am the Group Chief Diversity Officer at Barclays. I'm really excited to be taking part in this culminating event of the fourth annual Social Innovation Challenge. We are coming together again virtually, and you heard Tiffany talk about those challenging times that we continue to work our way through. To that end, I do hope that all of you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. I want to give a very special welcome to the 13 talented Social Innovation Challenge finalists who are here with us today. We thank you for the truly remarkable work that you're doing in building a more resilient and inclusive systems by tackling critical challenges across economic justice, youth development and empowerment, and narrative change and representation. I was with the other judges just a short while ago, and I can tell you that we are all really looking forward to hearing your pitches and learning more about your work. At Barclays, we're committed to supporting diversity in all its forms, and we believe that every individual should have the opportunity to fulfill their potential and achieve their personal and professional goals. A key piece of our Race at Work efforts is the role that we play in supporting our communities. We know that to have the greatest impact, we need to partner with organizations like Echoing Green, who are doing a huge amount of work to support, scale, and elevate leaders of color. We're really proud that Barclays is able to support that work and to help Echoing Green build on-ramps to social innovation through programs like this one. As a society, if we're going to see progress towards inclusive growth, we're going to need social entrepreneurs who drive so much impact in communities across the country and around the world. And I have no doubt we'll be hearing from some of the next great change makers today. Barclays' partnership with Echoing Green is helping to surface and accelerate the work of social innovators that are tackling injustices and promoting equity. A key aspect of our partnership is indeed the level of engagement from my colleagues. I'm grateful for the shout out from Tiffany. She named a number of the Barclays colleagues who have been part of this work. We've been in this partnership for a decade, And in that time, hundreds of volunteers from Barclays have worked with fellows to help them further their missions. The Social Innovation Challenge has been no different. And even ahead of tonight's event, Barclays volunteers helped these entrepreneurs in refining their pitches. I know my colleagues were impressed by what they heard, and we're all looking forward to seeing the real thing tonight. This work is centered on building a more equitable and inclusive society. And for that, I'd like to thank you, all of you, for the difference that you're making each and every day. I'll be on the judging panel, and I know we've got an evening of difficult decisions ahead of us. So let's get right to it. On behalf of Barclays, I'd like to welcome all of you, and indeed the extraordinary group of inspiring social innovators that you'll hear from shortly. Thanks for tuning in to the event. You're in for a treat, and I think you'll certainly leave feeling incredibly inspired. Tiffany, back over to you.
Thank you so much, Ray. Really appreciate that. We are so thrilled, as Ray said, that he will serve as one of our 3 pitch competition judges, along with Harlan Pacheco and Trella Walker. Harlan is a 2013 Echoing Green Fellow, and currently he works in business development, strategy, and ventures at Microsoft Viva. He has tons of experience accelerating the growth of organizations and fostering a culture where people and teams are given the tools to be their best. Next, I'm happy to introduce our final judge, Trella Walker. Trella is the interim CEO at the Nonprofit Finance Fund, where she leads its strategic focus on advancing racial equity and the nonprofit funding flow. Trella has over 20 years of experience building the capacity of organizations and leaders to innovate and create. Thank you so much to Ray, Trella, and Harlan for joining us. And now we are moving on to tonight's event. Here's a little bit of what you should expect. The pitch program will consist of 13 pitches divided into 3 different categories. Each leader will have 2 minutes to make their pitch. They're aware that we're on a tight schedule, so we'll ring a bell when their 2 minutes are up. We're going to play that sound for you just right now. Let's play that one more time. Awesome, awesome. After all the pitches are done, our judges will go into another Zoom room where they'll deliberate. And the rest of us will turn into a fireside chat with Echoing Green's Manager of Global Fellow Engagement, Brennan Dubose, and 2015 Fellow and founder of We Thrive, Daquan Oliver. Following the fireside chat, we'll learn who the winners are. And what's really exciting about this event is everyone will walk away with something. There'll be a winner in each category. Each winner will receive $20,000. Then audience members, this is where we want to hear from you. This is where you'll get in the chat. You'll tell us who you really love. You'll have the chance to vote for what we call Viewer's Choice Award, and that is across all categories. That individual will receive a prize of $18,000, and all remaining leaders will receive $8,000. And now, it's what you guys came here for. It's my honor to introduce the 13 leaders who will be pitching their solutions for a chance to win $20,000. At this time, I'll ask that all of our leaders join us on camera, but keep themselves on mute. It should be trickling in right now. These leaders have built an incredibly special community over the last month, and I'm excited to get my chance to introduce them. Tonight's program will consist of 13 pitches across pitches categorized by sector. First up, we have economic justice. Then we have narrative change and representation, and youth development and empowerment. This is also the order they'll go in. So make sure you're taking down your notes, you're following along with us. So at the end, you can vote for who is your Viewer's Choice awardee. And now it's time for the pitches. All right, guys. First up is economic justice. These leaders are presenting in this category are taking innovative approaches to build community power and a more just economy that provides opportunities for all people to thrive. At this time, I'm going to ask my colleague to go ahead and help me set up that timer. All right, I see you. Tyrants, and now I'm happy and proud to introduce our first presenter. First up, we have Tyrants Billingsley, founder of Black Tech Street.
Hello, my name is Tyrants Billingsley. I'm the founder of Black Tech Street, an initiative to rebirth Black Wall Street as a premier Black tech capital and catalyze a movement of Black people using STEM, embracing STEM to build wealth and impact the world. Black Wall Street was once the most prosperous community of Black entrepreneurs in the country, and it was destroyed in the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So as a relative of survivors, I began to ask myself the question, what could Black Wall Street have been had it been supported and not destroyed? And looking at the level of tenacity that it took for these entrepreneurs to build these businesses during Jim Crow, it reminded me a lot of the tech industry. And when I coupled that with the fact that tech is one of the only industries you can build intergenerational wealth in 7 to 10 years via successful exit, it's the core medium through which all global innovation is taking place. And that by the year 2030, there will be 4.3 million vacant tech jobs due to a tech talent shortage. I not only saw the incredible wealth building opportunity for my people, I saw the Black Wall Street vision drawn to its natural conclusion. And that conclusion was a premier Black tech ecosystem. To realize this vision, Black Tech Street is leading the charge in creating a 10-year citywide ecosystem innovation strategy around our 6 strategic pillars: entrepreneur support, narrative and communications, capital, workforce, infrastructure, and policy. This strategy will be sourced from a series of convenings of different economic stakeholders, from entrepreneur support organizations, capital providers, and Black entrepreneurs themselves, to help highlight where the gaps are, where investment could be most impactful, and create a roadmap for how each of these organizations can engage to push our ecosystem towards where it needs to go. Black Wall Street is one of the most inspiring stories in the history of Black America. And as its next iteration, Black Tech Street hopes to inspire Black people and communities across the country to create Black tech ecosystems that are community-led and built after the same spirit as Black Wall Street itself.
Tyrants, what a start. I mean, you said, what could Black Wall Street have been if it had been supported and not destroyed? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Petula George Redd, founder of Acres for Change.
Thank you. My name is Petula George Redd, and I'm the founder of Acres for Change. I'm also a Caribbean immigrant who has benefited from the US civil rights movement and the sacrifices and struggles of African Americans. I have experienced the negative impacts of systemic racism and believe Acres for Change is a robust solution to the growing racial wealth gap. Over the last 50 years, Black farmers have lost 11 billion acres of farmland through theft, fraud, and deception, denying generations the benefits of land ownership and access to fresh, healthy food. Of the country's 3.2 million farmers, only 1.3% are Black, which is 900,000 fewer than in 1920. Our pilot program in Baltimore, Maryland, creates a path to land ownership for minority farmers through a 2-year mushroom business and mentoring program. Acres for Change invests in the startup costs of the mushroom farm, while 6 urban farmers manage all aspects of the business. The mushrooms are sold directly to local restaurants and through a community-supported agriculture program. Farmers receive a monthly stipend, and the profits are matched and invested in a 2-year fund. Partner organizations provide educational workshops, wraparound services, and mentoring for farmers. The farmers use the money invested to purchase their own farmland on completion of the 2-year program. A new group of participants will then be enrolled in the program, and the cycle continues, equipping minority farmers with the tools to build economic stability, increase food sovereignty, and give back to their communities. We are changing lives and magnifying the impact over time by building skills and creating new landowners every 2 years. The program will expand to small business and home ownership within 5 years, bringing people from all backgrounds together to close the racial wealth gap through property ownership and healthy food access. Thank you so much.
Petula, as a fellow Jamaican, I am excited to hear that from you. So thank you so much. Next up, we have Terrence Lewis, founder of the Liberation Foundation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terrence Lewis. I am an exoneree from the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I served a total of 21 and a half years on a wrongful conviction, murder to be exact, due to the egregious misconduct of the Philadelphia Police Department prior to my exoneration and ultimately my release in 2019. So as that as a backdrop, in 2020, I founded and started the Liberation Foundation, which is an aim and serve as an underbridge arc of support to get and keep individuals home, individuals who are similarly situated as myself. We serve as a connective hub and an expansive advocacy network connecting individuals who from Pennsylvania with pro bono attorneys so that they have the support that they need in regards to coming back home again. Our very first case is a co-defendant of mine who actually served a total of 24 years on a wrongful conviction. And now he's home. He's been home for 90 days. The primary team from the Liberation Foundation is primarily consists of law students, undergrad students underneath the delegation of only 4 attorneys. And thus far, we have only been active since 2020. And now we already have our first case, which is my childhood friend. And we have to say her name, Jamar Gladden. He served 24 years on a murder that he did not commit. So taking this approach, which was the method and initiative which was applied in my case, pertaining to everybody else, and using this method, then all else can benefit from this as well. We take this and we go ahead and eradicate mass incarceration, which is nothing other than modern day slavery. We do it brick by brick, case by case, until we get the job done. Thank you.
Terrence, as someone who spent about 9 years in Philly, I see you and I'm with you on saying his name. Always got to say the names of those who are impacted by the systems. It humanizes them and it brings them to the center of why we do this work. So appreciate you.
Thank you.
And closing out our economic justice pitches is Anessa Blackham. She's the founder of Nourish the Soul.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Anessa Blackman, and I'm the founder of Nourish the Soil, a community created and curated social enterprise with one goal in mind: increasing the quality of life in all communities. One community at a time, we tackle 2 problems that disproportionately affect overstressed and under-resourced communities: chronic disease and unemployment. We radically collaborate with the most valuable resource of every community, its members, by training those that are unemployed to facilitate health and wellness classes, host monthly health screenings, and provide one-on-one health coaching. The path to improved quality of life is easier if you can walk it with someone you know and trust. As a podiatrist, I spent years amputating the legs of patients who were poor, uninsured, didn't have healthcare providers at any level of care that they trusted. They weren't fully educated about their health issues and lacked community and familial supports essential to managing their chronic diseases. That is not okay. The problem of healthcare is big, with systems in place that further disconnect us, kill us, or otherwise leave us behind. Because our ears and our hearts are open, our approach is harmonious, interconnected, small. Community teaches us to rely on one another, meet people where they are, and look within for solutions. Let me say that another way. Everything we need to increase the quality of life within my community and yours is already in the house. When funded through traditional insurers, community-based and venture funding sources, Nourish the Soil will do what community does best: collaborate, support, and benefit from one another. Thank you so much for listening, both here and here.
Now, Dr. Anessa, How am I supposed to continue when you just gave us a word like that? Woo! I don't even know what to say. Everything we need is within us. Everything we have is in the house. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the folks who just pitched in the economic justice section. I don't know if you guys can't see me at home, but I'm smiling from ear to ear, and then I realize you really can't see me, so I'm just smiling by myself. So I know you guys are at home doing the same. Next up, we have the narrative change and representation category. The leaders presenting in this group are reframing issues, transforming cultural narratives, and changing systems, all while elevating those closest to the issues they're helping to solve. Now it's time to introduce our first narrative change and representation presenter. First up, Cliff Dawkins, co-founder of, Cliff, co-founder of Association of Diverse American Mediators.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening. I'm Cliff Dawkins, an attorney and co-founder of the Association of Diverse American Mediators, or ADAM. Heads up, I'm a Jersey guy, so I talk fast, and we've got a bit of ground to cover. Though I'm a litigator by trade, I'm here to share with you why ADAM is a better option for resolving disputes than going to the courts. Here's the Cliff Notes. In just the United States federal courts, approximately 300,000 lawsuits, civil suits were filed in 2019. According to the federal EEOC, approximately 70,000 claims of discrimination were filed in 2020 alone. 40,000 of those claims that were filed with the EEOC were for retaliation, suggesting that well over half of the cases filed with the agency resulted from attempts to have controversies resolved before they became full-on lawsuits. Suffice it to say, in America, we're not great at resolving our controversies on our own. Enter ADAM. ADAM is an organization of experienced, highly effective alternative dispute resolution, or ADR professionals, that aims to increase access to diverse neutrals. Judge for yourselves. In the case of litigations versus mediations, litigations cost plaintiffs on average between $25,000 and $50,000 and defendants between $75,000 and $150,000 and can take 2 to 3 years before the parties get to trial. By contrast, mediations cost parties between $5,000 and $7,500, split 50-50, and can resolve in a week's time. Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. Unlike the traditional US court system that divorces legal frameworks from social considerations, ADAM intentionally incorporates social context and other information important to the parties into the dispute resolution process, leading to more meaningful, thorough, and lasting resolutions. In a world where alternative facts exist and perceptions are seemingly becoming more and more divergent, we invite you to resolve your conflicts with ADAM.
Cliff, as a fellow New Yorker this time, I won't say anything about Jersey. We appreciate all that you do. And thank you for dating me a little bit with the Cliff Notes. That was cute. I liked it. Next up, we have Kathy Liu, co-founder of Immigrant History Initiative.
When my dad came to America, he didn't bring a lot, just a dictionary, a little bit of cash, and the acceptance letter for his university. Because the majority of what immigrants bring aren't things, but dreams and hopes about their future here. So what happens when these dreams don't match up to reality? A lot of nonprofits already focus on the material needs of immigrants in crisis: food, shelter, jobs, but that's not enough. For immigrants of color, the flip side of assimilation to America is identity erasure and immense mental health impacts with significantly higher rates of depression. My dad stepped into America's complex racial dynamics with zero resources to start understanding. How do you react when your son is spat on or your wife is called a racial slur? How do you process these experiences when you don't know what's happening or where it's coming from in a country that you thought would be a new beginning? This is where we step in. I'm Kathy Liu, and I co-founded the Immigrant History Initiative to give new immigrants a racial justice starter kit. We run programs for families with in-language facilitation, using history and storytelling to unpack their experiences and understand the deep connections between migration and race. With this knowledge, new immigrants of color can advocate for their communities in the fight for racial justice. During COVID, my dad struggled with anti-Asian violence, which recalled his past memories of racial trauma that he didn't have the support for when he first came. We've impacted thousands of other parents like him and heard from past participants about the transformative power of our work. With your help, we can take our Racial Justice Starter Kit national. We are scaling our work by running this program in all the little temples and churches, the family-run community centers that are the heart of an immigrant community. Join us by volunteering or donating to bring our programs to more families. Because beyond material things, we also need this, the knowledge and the empowerment to fight for justice and our belonging in this country. Thank you.
A racial justice starter kit. I love that one, Kathy. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Renee Bracy Sherman, founder of We Testify.
Hi, my name is Renee Bracy Sherman. Like 1 in 4 cisgender women, and probably a few of you, I had an abortion. When I had my abortion, I didn't see anyone in the news who looked like me or shared their stories. I kept my abortion a secret for 6 years until I met others who had abortions, and I finally felt free. When I learned that the majority of people who have abortions are people of color, I was floored. We weren't visible in leadership, in protest photos, or really a focus of our own movement because of the racism and anti-Blackness that pushes us to the margins. I felt I needed to create a change. That's why in 2016, I founded We Testify to build the leadership and representation of people who have abortions, especially those of us living at the intersections of race, class, and gender identity. Our mighty staff of 2 holds retreats and workshops for people who've had abortions to understand how racism and abortion stigma impact their lives and train them to share their stories with confidence and brilliance. With investments in our work, we've grown to over 90 abortion storytellers, 90% of whom are people of color, and 97% of whom experience financial, logistical, and legal barriers to abortion. Our storytellers are queer and trans, undocumented, disabled, and formerly incarcerated. Storytellers like Amy and Val, who graced the pages of the New York Times, Brittany and Nick, who are featured in an award-winning documentary that premiered at Sundance, Kenya and Shavana, who rallied crowds at the Supreme Court, and Stephanie, Maliha, and Tohan, who testified before Congress. This moment is urgent. We have no idea what abortion access will look like after June 2022. But what I do know is that we can change the conversation to ensure that Black and Brown folks who are more likely to be criminalized are at the forefront of the conversation. An investment in abortion storytellers is an investment in the movement for healthcare for all. We can create a future for reproductive justice when we tell a fuller story of who has abortions and why. That's the power of our stories when we testify. Thank you.
Renee, not only do I love the slogan, I love the shirt, but I love the urgency of now and forevermore. So thank you so much. Next up, we have Taylor Newvell, founder of Who Speaks For Me.
Hi, my name is Taylor Newvell, and I'm the founder and executive director of Who Speaks For Me. Who Speaks For Me seeks to interrupt and dismantle the trauma to prison pipeline for women, girls, and LGBTQ people of color. I served 4.5 years in federal prison, and that's how I came to this work. While I was incarcerated, people called me a jailhouse lawyer, as I helped other people who were detained with me. Because I was an advocate and activist while in prison, this led me to be a target. Often I found myself in solitary confinement. One of those days, I looked up and thought to myself, who's speaking for me? I drafted Who Speaks For Me, and what you see today is what we're about to begin.
Taylor, I'm gonna jump in real quick because what you're saying is way too powerful for the internet to get your way. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pause you real quick. I want you to turn your camera off, and then turn it back on. And then let's see. What you're saying is too powerful for the internet or the Wi-Fi, or Verizon or Comcast to stop your shine. So let's see what happens if we can fix that real quick.
I can't stop my video.
All right.
I stop my video. I can't.
All right, let's give me.
All right, let's
Say something.
give me.
Okay,
All
my
right,
video.
it's on you.
Okay,
All right, so
my-
what we're gonna do, Taylor, what we're gonna do, we're gonna stop you for a second. We're gonna move on to the next person. One of the folks on the EG side is gonna troubleshoot that with you, because what you're saying is way too important. The people you fight for are too important for anyone or any internet to get in your way. So we'll take care of you. Just hold tight. Della, are you ready? And you are up next.
All right, thank you.
All right, let me give you the introduction you deserve. I want to make sure that you were there. Next up, we have Della Wilson, founder of Axle Impact Studio.
In January 2021, Fortune and Deloitte surveyed 125 CEOs. 91% said they are investing in their talent lifecycle to promote racial equity, but only 22% said they are investing in their products or services to advance that same goal. This is while consumers and their own employees demand more globally. Shifts in population demographics and consumer consciousness requires it. Window dressing efforts like general education on implicit bias and employee resource groups have value, but their influence is limited. Axle Impact Studio solves for this. As a global social impact design firm rooted in the nexus of complexity and collaboration, we provide strategy and management consulting to reposition economies, institutions, and human behavior for equity. Through our equitable ecosystem analysis, we evaluate the 5 domains within corporate control and their impact on surrounding ecosystems. Then we use the reparative impact framework to first realign internal and team operations while mirroring those intentions through product and service design. We've worked with companies like Etsy to support internal advocacy of expanded product design rooted in asset-oriented market research of Black and Latinx consumers and entrepreneurs. Orgs like Bloomberg Center for Government Excellence at Johns Hopkins University to advise an organizational merger, contextualize racial equity education, and develop a non-paternalistic, equity-centered consulting model used to guide development of data practices across 130 cities. And Trap Heels, an LA-based cultural architecture firm working with Axle to develop organizational strategy at scale through what we've deemed as forgotten cities, or majority Black towns with populations of less than 50,000. We do this work through a network of living experts called Spokes, who apply transnational, multi-generational, and cross-disciplinary knowledge, and most importantly, lived experience to long-term strategies for systemic change. There are approximately 450 DEI consulting firms owned by people of color. Most are boutique and focus primarily on HR. However, the most influential and largest organizations are advised by white male-dominant multinational corporations with expertise across industries. Our goal is to redesign this dynamic. We believe it's time to rethink who and how we define equity by design. Welcome to Axle Impact Studio.
Thank you so much, Della. Systems and structures were designed so we can always redesign them. So I'm here with you on that one. Thank you so much to all of the folks who just pitched in that particular category. We are going to move on to our next and final category, but also don't forget, we're gonna have our incredible friend and leader, Taylor, come back shortly once we get her tech together. Our last group is the Youth Development and Empowerment category. These leaders support the talents and visions of young people. They're creating strong support networks for young people to access the tools and opportunities to solve problems in their communities. First up, we have James Dold, founder of Human Rights for Kids.
Hi, my name is James Dold, and I'm the CEO and founder of Human Rights for Kids, a DC-based nonprofit that is working to protect human rights for children in the United States criminal legal system. I started Human Rights for Kids in part as a response to the human rights violations I suffered as a child. As a teenager, I was a victim of child sex abuse and child labor trafficking. These experiences that inspired me to go to law school and become a human rights lawyer. Very early on in my career, I was working to help free a young woman by the name of Sarah. Sarah was a victim of child sex trafficking and rape, who had been sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for having killed a man who had sex trafficked and raped her from the time she was 11. Sarah was one of 76,000 children who every year in the United States are prosecuted as adults where their victim and child status is completely ignored. Sarah is also one Sarah's also one of 83% of children who are racial minorities in the legal system. More than 10,000 children have been sentenced to life imprisonment in the United States. When we look at the backgrounds of these children, many of them often come from the most disinvested communities where they've been experienced high rates of trauma and violence before ever becoming system involved. At Human Rights for Kids, we're working to disrupt this dynamic by advocating for policy change at the state and federal level that would work to end life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for children and the application of mandatory minimum sentences for youth, and working to pass something known as Sarah's Law, which is named after Sarah, to protect child sex crime victims who commit acts of violence against their abusers. We also advocate in state and federal courts through the submission of what are known as amicus briefs or friend of the court briefs, where we advocate for human rights protections for children who are in the criminal legal system. Black life cannot matter to us in this country unless the lives of Black children matter to us. And the lives of Black children cannot matter to us unless we are willing to protect their basic human rights. We hope you will join us in advocating for an end to what is the largest government-sanctioned human rights abuse against children in the world today. Thank you.
James, you don't know this about me, but I am a girls AAU coach, and anything about young people gets right to my heart. So I appreciate you for all you do and keep doing what you do. Next up, we have Armin Salik, founder of Youth Justice Alliance.
Hi, y'all. My name is Armin Salik, and I work at the intersection of law and education. As an attorney, I'm a member of the least diverse profession in America, with 86% of lawyers identifying as white, non-Hispanic. This isn't just a matter of access to high-paying jobs. I've seen firsthand that this means legal aid providers lack the language skills and cultural capital to serve their clients. I've seen clear racial divides between attorneys and the communities they serve. I've seen lack of access to policymaking circles from underrepresented communities. This is a matter of access to legal knowledge, legal power, and legal support. Sadly, the legal profession's efforts at diversity are currently focused on law school, but that's way too late. By then, we've already filtered out so many talented, aspiring would-be attorneys, first-generation lawyers that could be the change in their community and could be the change in our profession. We need to start earlier at the secondary level at the high schools where everybody has access. 4 years ago, I established the first high school legal aid clinic in the country at Aikens High School in Southeast Austin. Alongside my team of high school student legal assistants, we provided around $100,000 worth of free legal support. Asylum applications were submitted, green cards approved, citizenship approved, family law issues resolved, records cleared, wills drafted, and families that were accustomed to being told no by legal service providers were finally getting the support that they needed. And there were no language barriers, there was no racial divide because the students were serving their own community. In exchange for their efforts, we provide them with a rigorous and robust legal education, judge and attorney mentors, career guidance, and a secondary family. All of a sudden, students from a school that was rated as below average were now arguing in front of a Texas Supreme Court justice. They were meeting with attorneys at law conferences with decades of experience, qualifying to represent Texas at the National Mock Trial Finals, meeting with recruiters from the leading law firms in America. These students transformed a justice-deprived community into a justice-empowered community. But one school won't make the difference in our profession. We need countless justice-empowered communities to finally do the work of democratizing the law. Thank you.
Armin, thank you so much for all that you do. I don't know how these judges are going to do this, but I'm just here to say the names and to cheer you guys on. Next up, we have Joy Lindsay, founder of Butterfly Dreams.
Hi, my name is Joy Lindsay, and I'm the founder and CEO of Butterfly Dreams. Butterfly Dreams is a 501c3 nonprofit that equips girls to be confident leaders and supports them in achieving their dreams. While pursuing their personal, professional, and academic goals, Black girls in the United States are often faced with racism, stereotypes, abuse, and other inequities. This is not just evidenced in research, but in the stories of our girls. Stories of girls being harassed and overlooked in classrooms. Stories of girls juggling part-time jobs, school assignments, and family obligations. Stories of teen mothers fighting with everything that they have not to give up on their dreams. When girls come to Butterfly Dreams, it is because they are in need of community and opportunity. Our Cocoon Club is a multi-generational online community of women and girls working together to help girls, particularly Black girls, thrive personally and professionally. We connect girls to mentorship, scholarships, and holistic leadership development. As girls' needs increased during the pandemic, our membership grew from 50 girls in Newark, New Jersey to over 500 members across the United States. Our Cocoon Club is co-designed and co-led by our high school and college interns. This youth-led design ensures the club is interesting, relevant, and beneficial. We leverage mobile technology to make our programs and partner programs scalable and accessible. Our community app gives our girls and alumni 24-hour access to our club. That's 24-hour access to community and opportunities. I founded Butterfly Dreams in 2013 after losing my younger sister, Kimberly, to gun violence. What started as a desire to turn my pain into purpose is now so much more. We aren't just a nonprofit, we aren't just a network. We are a movement that inspires girls to live boldly, dream big, and fly high. I hope you'll join us.
Joy, thank you so much. And your sister, Kimberly, is thanking you too. Next up and last in this category is Marcus Hardin, co-founder of the Academy for Creating Excellence.
That's it. Who am I? I am excellence. That is how we end and begin our days at the Academy for Creating Excellence, where our mission is to cultivate viable world citizens through our values of fame. That's family, academics, motivation, and environment. Because we believe everybody is famous. I know you saw what I did there. Who am I? Well, my name is Marcus Hardin, co-founder of ACE, lifelong educator, advocate, and proud adoptive foster parent of 6 sons, but most of all, believer in all children, specifically Black and brown young men that have been historically marginalized and underserved in education. At ACE, through our approach and programming rooted in real-world learning, knowledge of self, and love for pedagogy, which centers the excellence in our students first and builds asset-based curriculum from there, I'm able to represent the 2% of Black males in education. And that's a problem. Our solution, a series of 12-week programs that immerses and introduces Black and brown male students, grades 6 through 12, into the mindsets and skill sets it takes to become a highly effective teacher to revolutionize the pipeline early. We do this for and with students like my guy, Matt. When I ask who he is, he says, man, Mr. Marcus, I'm just a student who says he hates school, but he loves Mr. Ricky, his Black male math teacher. Our work at ACE is about expanding his knowledge of self, building on his innate excellence to go from not just being a learner, but shifting the paradigm for him to see himself as both a learner and a teacher. Students, through hands-on learning and mentorship, will learn the skills to become teachers, such as public speaking, curriculum design, social emotional learning, and coaching. The benefits, well, they're easy. Increased self-efficacy, career readiness, and educational advocacy. While our goal is to increase to 2%, we'll also build students who will walk away with lifelong skills that will service them in any role and allow them to advocate for themselves as students right now. So when we end the day and we ask Matt again, who are you? He can boldly pronounce, I'm a student, I'm a teacher, and I am excellence. And with your belief in us and our belief in my guy, Matt, we can grow the teaching force, change the world, and we can all respond, we're excellence. Thank you.
Marcus, now you're gonna have me walking around here telling everybody, who am I? Excellence. That's my new jam. And anybody that knows me at EG, we might have to take that one on too. Thank you so much to all the incredible folks that just pitched in the youth development and empowerment category. We didn't forget about our incredible and brilliant leader, Taylor Newvell. Taylor.
I'm here.
Let me say one thing to you. Our good brother just now said, who are we? We are excellent. And so are you. So what you're gonna do right now is you're gonna take a deep breath, because the Wi-Fi is not in your way. You've been validated by this work way before Comcast, Verizon, anyone else got in your way with that internet, right? So take that breath and speak for you and the people you work for.
Hi, my name is Taylor Newvell. I'm the founder and executive director of Who Speaks For Me. Who Speaks For Me seeks to interrupt and dismantle the trauma to prison pipeline for women, girls, and LGBTQ people of color. I came to this work after serving 4.5 years in federal prisons. While I was incarcerated, people called me a jailhouse lawyer as I advocated for other people who were detained. This made me a target of the staff, and often I found myself in solitary confinement. One of my last stints in solitary confinement, I looked up to the sky and I said, who speaks for me? This is where the project was born. When I came off that stint, I drafted what you see now as Who Speaks for Me. I learned when I came home that 85% of women, girls, and LGBTQ people of color have experienced some form of trauma prior to incarceration. Child abuse, sexual violence, intimate partner violence, sexism, homophobia, and it goes on. Our programs that we do to build a trauma-informed justice system include a speakers bureau, which is called Sharing Our Stories to Reclaim Our Lives. And we invite people who are system impacted to share their stories based on topics that we choose, such as women and LGBTQ people aging in prison, America's Forgotten Elders. We also have a Women Cooking in Prison food justice program, in which women come together who've been incarcerated and they make foods that they made while in prison, and they discuss the injustice of the types of food that are served to them in women's jails and prisons. Lastly, we have Building a Trauma-Informed Justice System Conference, which we will be hosting in the fall of 2022. It's a 2-day healing conference, a healing and education conference for gatekeepers, allies, and mental health professionals and system impacted people. Interrupting the trauma to prison pipeline is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I'm committed to creating alternatives to prison for people like me. Thank you.
Come on, Taylor. Look at you showing up after someone tried to take you out. We appreciate you and all that you do. We appreciate you. Now, go have that glass of wine, that water, because it's all done.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And that concludes all of our presenters for the evening. Let's give it up for all of our participants. I'm gonna clap out loud since you guys can't do it, but put it in the chat. Yes, there we go, come on. I mean, our judges have a really, really difficult decision ahead. And while they're deliberating, I'm so excited to introduce this next conversation. Honestly, it features two of my favorite people. First, I'd like to welcome my friend and colleague, Brennan Dubose. Brennan is the manager of Global Fellow Engagement at Echoing Green. Brennan connects current and alumni fellows to each other and elevates their work across the field. As part of that work, he leads the strategy and implementation for Echoing Green's Fellow Mentorship Program, which builds relationships among leaders committed to racial justice and equity worldwide. He will be in conversation with 2015 fellow Daquan Oliver. Daquan is the founder and CEO of We Thrive. We Thrive equips underestimated youth to own their future. We Thrive youth identify problems in local communities. We Thrive sharpens their business into viable business plans. And then by using the seed funding they provide to launch real micro enterprises, keeping their revenues and traction. Using entrepreneurship as a practice, We Thrive is closing the racial wealth gaps throughout the country by ensuring that the institutions that youth in our communities interact with are contextually relevant in identifying, elevating, and supporting economic leaders. Please help me welcome Brennan and Daquan.
Well, thank you so much for that warm welcome, Tiffany.
I do what I can. I do what I can.
It's definitely it's been an amazing night. I've been so excited and just been smiling ear to ear to be able to watch these amazing social innovators talk about their work, and it's just left me so inspired. So I'm so excited and thrilled to start this conversation with Daquan.
Take it away.
Thank you. Daquan, so again, really excited to be chatting with you today. And obviously we've known each other for quite some time now, but as a 2015 Echoing Green Fellow, as well as the founder and executive director of We Thrive, I just want to welcome you again into tonight's event. And so I really want to kind of start us off with something that you're very familiar with. At Echoing Green, we often talk about the moment of obligation, that moment, that experience that really kind of like sets the tone and path and trajectory of the work that you have made your life work. And so I really want to kind of start us off with, can you tell us a little bit about yours? What was your moment of obligation and what brought you into the leadership in which you find yourself in now?
Yeah, 100%. Well, one, again, just wanted to really say how much I love the presentation today. I really found myself just like really gravitating towards everyone's pitch. So everyone, I just thought that was amazing. I was taking notes for a fact. A little bit to the moment of obligation question, Brennan, you asked directly. For me, it was just kind of like a real buildup, right? I think there was like constant moments of obligation from my childhood. I think that's also part of the reason why I value youth so much, right? Whether it was, as a kid, I can remember my earliest memories, growing up in the project, seeing like just a giant police van, just positioned there. And to me, I didn't feel safe as a kid with just this giant police van, giant antenna, and a lot of that stuff going on, right? So that moment felt like a moment of obligation where, even as a kid, by 6th or 7th grade, I had stopped standing for the flag because I felt that it wasn't representative or protective of me and my rights and the individuals I was growing up with. I think my ultimate kind of like real boiling point where I just kind of had like, no, absolutely, I'm going to do every single thing I can, was after middle school, right? At that point, I think I had heard enough teachers say something to me around like, Daquan, you're so smart, but why do you talk like that, right? And after middle school, my mother and I had graduated, and then we spent that next summer spending out of our Ford Explorer, right? And there's a lot that goes on in between that, right, leading up to that. But the major point that matters most in that moment of obligation is just that moment where I realized that this was not a unique circumstance between me and I think many of my other peers. And there was a fed upness within that where I said, not only was I not going to allow that to defeat me, but I was going to make sure I was successful regardless and make sure my community had a pathway to success. And so for me, that came when I was 14, right after middle school. And then I think from there, I was doing these kind of like things that were like kind of like responses and reactions to a system that I felt was really trying to constantly crush me. I think that was the moment where I felt like I was going to start doing something proactive to really make sure that I was in a position to still be successful and do the same for my peers.
Daquan, thank you so much for sharing that. And it's something that stuck out to me, what you just said about a system trying to crush you. I really want to kind of like lean into that a little bit more because, what these brilliant innovators just pitched was really kind of like focused on systems change work, right? Changing a system to be more inclusive, to be more compatible, to lean into some of the values that have been showcased tonight and that, people are living every single day. And what I find to be really, really interesting is that We Thrive disrupts the status quo of education, right? And what many people don't talk about as often is that education is a system, right? And the work that you're doing around youth development, around economic advancement, can you talk a little bit about how you in We Thrive does this work day to day and how you're kind of like changing systems to be more inclusive for all?
Yeah. So I guess I'll have to start with saying the system that we focus on is around closing racial wealth gaps in the United States, right? I think there's a lot of things within cyclical poverty and closing racial wealth gaps that come up, but like when we have to target it, right, it's about closing racial wealth gaps. Now, when we dig deeper, right, it's then about how are we shifting systems of economic development to uniquely focus on 11 to 17-year-olds as key drivers of economic prosperity, right? So one of the key things that we believe in is that it's super easy to talk about systems change and infrastructure and disrupting status quo. One of the things we try to get extremely concrete on for ourselves is just what specifically is the change and the resulting effect of that thing. And for us, what that represents is that one, we live in an educational system and an economic development system, which education is a part of, just to be clear, right? That waits effectively until most young people turn 18 to start doing anything, right? And so for the most part, most of our youth experiences a system that says, all right, you do your best, we'll see you when you're 18 and we'll try to make sure that, whatever you have left, we're gonna hope that we can get you to somehow economic prosperity, right? And so one of our key things is, one, not only how do we model what a successful intervention economically looks like for an 11 to 17-year-old, but also how do we make sure that the structures and policies represent that, right? And then as a quick example of the kind of structure and policy that would assist with that is thinking of our school districts, right? And so we work with our school districts to change their cash budgeting policies. most schools have a policy that says you can't sell on school premises, right? And so that experience of economic development and participation right there is automatically limited for all youth. Now, the key gap that gets widened and created is that if you're a young person in a highly invested community, right, that is going to have those opportunities to explore that in other ways, maybe that's coming from your parents or your community in different ways, well, you know, you're not actually taking that hit, right? You're going to continue to be able to grow and to gain that experience. Our goal is to make sure that by changing policies like allowing all youth to get registered and actually sell things on school site unlocks that kind of opportunity, right? And so we do that in a number of different ways by working alongside our schools and our school districts to change these policies that are there for valid reasons, but oftentimes left unchecked are blockers and limiters on who gets to participate and when, right? Those are the kind of things that we look at specifically.
Thank you so much for that. And again, thank you for the work that you do day in and day out. Something that Tiffany mentioned earlier, she talked about, you know, the problems that we find ourselves facing and that people are constantly and consistently talking about every single day, they're not new, right? These are problems, these are issues that have been going on since the beginning of time. They just evolve, they change, they're iterated, and they continue to be perpetuated amongst people of color specifically, but all people. And so, you know, what we find really interesting about this time as we navigate a global pandemic is that there's something changing. There's a conversation happening around like the haves and the have-nots. COVID-19 has specifically impacted students of color in a huge way, and also students that come from low-income neighborhoods. And the disparities such as digital equity, affordable and reliable child care, internet access, these are things that have become the top of conversation because these students are being consistently left out. And so I'm really interested in this past, you know, I would say 20 months now that we've been navigating this global pandemic. How has We Thrive responded during this time? And I'll stop with that question and I'll have a follow-up with you.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that our focus is continuing to leverage youth as the change makers and drivers of solutions. Right. We're an entrepreneurship organization, right? At the end of the day, our youth are creating real companies and real revenues. And so one of the key things about entrepreneurship, as everyone on this knows, is that those who are most proximate to a problem are the best fit to solve it, right? And that goes especially for youth in our communities. So for example, over the pandemic, we saw youth showing up to create virtual babysitting companies, right, to assist parents who were now at home and had to do some of the childcare themselves, et cetera, right? We had high schoolers creating virtual babysitting companies. What's interesting about that is that there were dozens of those, right? And so those kinds of things, again, where we have youth within their home seeing that pain point and then looking and seeing how they can give that same solution to others who are in a similar position in community, right? Like that is a kind of change making at heart that youth are capable of and then can be fostered at that early level. And the other kinds of solutions that we also saw throughout COVID-19 are things like lawn mowing companies for the elderly in their community who were not looking to go outside, right? And so like things like that, where we saw like a host of companies that were around community services, right? That were then being sold to different members of the community, everything from mass delivery services and things like that. And again, all from youth who are 12 years old and up, getting the real revenues, getting the real traction. And so for us, the way we navigated COVID-19 was really leaning even deeper into the community and asking them, hey, what new problems are you seeing pop up? And just making sure that we're elevating youth as the co-collaborators to drive those solutions.
You talked about how you've navigated, but could you share a little bit more about what you've learned while navigating? Because, you know, pivoting during a time of crisis is not easy. And I think that everyone who's listening in on this conversation can acknowledge that this time has not been easy for anyone, but specifically for social entrepreneurs, and especially a social entrepreneur like you who are serving, you know, a specific community and has specific needs. You know, what have you learned during this time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things there, right? I think number one of the key things we're learning is that the ways in which youth are interacting with existing resources, right? We can call them a little more broadly, is not a fit for most of them, right? So for example, something as simple as when we had online learning, trying to transfer exactly to Zoom was actually not always a proper fit, right? For some youth, it is more so like, hey, I would rather something asynchronous, learn the thing and then connect when I need so, right? And so one of the key things we learned is just to make sure that things are even more specifically catered to individual youth contexts and their preferred ways of learning and engaging and participating. The other kinds of things that we learned are just honestly the ways in which the infrastructures themselves aren't always well equipped to manage that change, right? I mean, we have the privilege of being able to work with some amazing teachers, but even for many of them, right? I mean, a lot of our teachers had to literally shift their jobs to start focusing during those first months of pandemic to breakfast and meal disbursement, right? And then figuring out how they're going to get things like laptops to the community. And so just looking at from a broader infrastructure challenge, right? Just the ways in which we try to leverage existing resources to do things they aren't always best to do. And then the broader question of what gaps are missing. There's a lot of questions there, right? I know you asked like what we learned, but I think one of the biggest things is just the additional questions that get overlooked and answered too easily without actually looking all the way through, right? Planning all the way to the end or so. Those are some of the things we saw is just, again, like additional breaks in the infrastructure. And honestly, I will continue to say, right, from those learnings, an additional insight to ways in which youth specifically are so well positioned to solve those things and ready and be able to just to see the thing. So those are some of the things we saw throughout the infrastructure as just from teacher capacity, student capacity, and then just what new priorities have shifted. After school, for example, is just like something that's like still trying to be breastfeed in.
Equan, I know as brilliant and amazing you are, you don't do this work alone. And you are someone who is an amazing community member in the fellowship, and you are always consistently and constantly showing up for your fellows to support them. Do you have any advice for emerging leaders and social entrepreneurs that are looking to grow their networks and develop their leadership through community?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I always think about when I think of that question is just to find and lean into the champions who are really for you, right? And definitely for the mission, but specifically as a leader trying to figure their way, right, for you. I think those are the things that have been a big major driver for me. It's no secret that Echoing Green specifically is one of those individuals, right? But you know, the thing about Echoing Green is like it's not Echoing Green, right? It's you, right? It's Tiffany, it's various individuals throughout, right? And so I think that's been my experience is just even when I was in college, for example, there were very champions who, you know, still to this day will check on me and just see like how are things going. And so my recommendation is always to find those champions who are willing to tell you, especially when something is trash, right? Like that is my personal favorite feedback. If something is trash, so I can fix it, right? And there have been times with our program model where we were going to do something or we might have tried something to fundraise, and we were told it was trash, and I had to investigate it. I'm like, no, it is trash. You're right. And then I fixed it and I made it amazing, right? And so those are the things. It's not just even the feedback piece. The people who are willing to really sit down with you, the people who are willing to make introductions, just find those champions and leaning in is the biggest thing, no matter what institution or person you find them through.
Finding champions and leaning in. You know, when you're thinking about finding those champions, right? Sometimes those champions come from all different walks of life. They have various different understandings, they have various different interests, but they want to support and they want to lean in as much as they possibly can. You know, what's your advice to allies and partners looking to play a role in making an impact? And what can you share about your past ally and partnership experiences that have helped you get here?
Yeah, I mean, there's like a million different ways I could always bring that, right? I think when I think about ally and partner engagement, I really think it's always about one, just making sure a door is open, right? Like I think a lot of times, like with allies and partners, the value that I've experienced is just when doors are open so that I can reach out whenever needed and have those conversations for the thing. And the thing sometimes is a challenge. The thing sometimes is fundraising. The thing sometimes is an introduction. The thing sometimes is just feedback, right? one. Two, I think the other thing as well is just when I think about the purpose and focus of allies and supporters in our work, it's really making sure like, how are they showing up in our mission in other ways that aren't just like working with me or other members on the team, right? And so really, how are they getting engaged with, for example, the youth that we work with? Like those are some of our strongest allies and supporters. It's just like, they were always kind of like directly aligned to that. They have participated in like the mentoring and we have virtual office hours that feel similar to this in a Zoom setting. So those are some of the biggest things that I would mention. I do just want to add, like, there's always a million things I can say there. But I think for us and our experience, the value of allies and supporters has always been one, that open door to have whatever conversation was relevant. And then two, just the focus and collaboration directly with our youth partners themselves, which is also part of a system itself that doesn't exist sustainably enough, is how do youth sustainably connect with adults in those kind of corporate professional settings.
No, absolutely. I want to also kind of lean into, again, those who've kind of supported you in the way. You mentioned mentoring, and I might be a little partial to the mentorship experience because of the work that I do. But I do know that mentorship, encouragement, support is super, super important. And I'm thinking about kind of like your story and kind of like how you have had to navigate various different systems to kind of be Daquan, right? To become the person that you are right in front of me. And so I'm interested, is there a specific person in your life that has championed you from beginning to end? And can you share a little bit about who they are and how they've kind of motivated you to continue to push for higher heights?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few, like from the beginning to end is a hard one, right?
we can look at it as a train. Who's hopped on the Daquan train and really supported you along the way?
Yeah, I'm good.
Because again, we know that you haven't. People, we do this in community. We do this as a collective.
100%.
I think that that's something that's so incredible about We Thrive, because you always talk about the community of the organization, community of the kids that you serve. And so I think that that's something that's super, super important in this conversation too.
Yeah, 1000%, right? I mean, like, I already mentioned Tiffany, right? Tiffany already knows, she's definitely one of the first people that come to mind here, right? So I will talk about Tiffany anyways, right? So
we love Tiffany. We'd love to talk about Tiffany. We love Tiffany.
All right, bet. So Tiff really is a good example here, right? Because really one of the key values that I always think about and that I draw value from in my conversations with Tiffany is just the ability to show up as my authentic self, right? And the ability to do that is to then bring my authentic genius into play as well, right? I think it's very easy to be in a world, especially, I got my Equine Green Fellowship when I was 22, right? Straight out of college. And so I was still figuring out who I was, right? And if I had allowed the social sector and funders and all the review and feedback to tell me that, I would be some super carbon copy predominant norm that already existed, and that would have came up with nothing new to solve no new problems, right? And so I think I'll spend a lot of time thinking about that as just how important it is for those mentors, allies, and supporters in our lives to really encourage like the best of this person and who they are authentically and the genius of themselves, right? A lot of that is definitely my own experience as a Black man in this space, particularly that specifically chose, along the way not to code switch and to really live out what I felt was my own definition of a strong leader, right? So those are some of the things I would say, right? That when I think about the power of mentoring and to me, what was most important about those kinds of things, right? It's just the permission to be my authentic self. There's a lot I could say about that. I've been in conversations where literally as a 22-year-old, I had made a comment around like using slang and then quickly apologized for it, right? And then just immediately, someone on the Equine Green staff actually had mentioned like, nah, don't need to apologize. And it just completely shifted, right? How I moved. And so just little boosts like that, I found are key.
Why do you think it's so hard for leaders of color specifically to be their authentic self? because I think this is a continuous theme that I see personally in the work that I do, but then also that I hear from various different stages. You know, this fear, this almost this experience of double consciousness to navigate a world that you don't find values the work that you do, but then also perpetuates various different issues on you that expect you to solve. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you spoke to that, so I just wanted to kind of like dig in deeper if you can a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. So like what it is, I think for me, my experience was that for the funders I interacted with and the prospects, right? I think there's a certain process that you receive feedback through. There's a certain process by which you can sometimes often even need to come to the table through, right? From my experience, it was all about who backed you, who introduced you, right? Like for sure, there were funders where if I just hadn't received that particular introduction, I wouldn't have gotten that same budget based on the same impact we were going to create based on the same historical impact, right? It's those things that begin to shift how a person decides to communicate themselves, who they decide to spend their time with, right? I think there's a lot of drivers specifically, in my experience, coming from the funding side of the table that are definitely incentives behind what you do and how you do it in your own fundraising strategy, even so much as so to affect programming, right? I mean, we fought everything we could not to become an educational organization that was purely focused on grades and GPAs, because our focus was much more akin to wealth building, right? And yet there were funders who would say they would give us money only if we focus on those things. And so I think in my experience, it has been some of the funding incentives around those things, and the feedback is key as well, right? I've had funders say things to me akin to like, you know, if you hadn't had those earrings in your ear, right? Like I've had funders comment on the earrings in my ear, for example, and try to give me helpful feedback, right? And on one end, right, like you can honor intent, sure, but on the other end, I think those things definitely need to be held into center of, again, who are we trying to elevate and to do what, right? Are we not trying to elevate young Black men who wear earrings in their ear? And why not is an important question that I would ask myself in those moments. And I think just being important about asking myself those questions was key, right? So I think it's important just to call out, like, one, those are the drivers, and then two, at least in my experience, ways in which I was to navigate that. Not always successfully, but I would say mostly successfully.
You know, Daquan, you talk a lot about the people who you're fighting for. And one thing that, you know, I constantly, consistently hear our president and CEO, Cheryl Dorsey, or like my colleague, Rachel D. Lattimore, talk about is dreams, right? Dreaming big, dreaming wide, right? And I'm curious, when you think about the dreams for the community that you serve, what is that?
I would say, you know, I'm always tempted to say something crazy, right? Because there's a lot of crazy things on that dream wish list, but it really just is as simple as the access to elite level resources and opportunities that are going to allow them to build their own dreams, right? Like I could talk about all the ways in which the structures and things do need to change, but it really is just as simple as like elite level access to elite level resources and elite level opportunities so they can build their own dreams.
When you think about legacy, what do you ultimately want your legacy to be? And I'm going to close our conversation out like that, because you, Daquan, you know, we've talked about this, man. We've talked about legacy. We've talked about our what we hope for and what we want when it's all said and done. And I'm really thinking a lot about, you know, all the work that you've done so far, but just at a young age, man, like you're still like, it's so much more to do. There's so much more to accomplish. There's so many battles to continue to fight. And so I'm thinking about, like, when you think about your legacy, what is that?
I don't know, right? Like, I honestly feel like, I guess I've been doing this for a while now, right? And I've always said this, I'm doing this to 150. You know, so I kind of feel like whenever I hit 40 is when I'm gonna have a better idea of what legacy looks like. I think for me, my most important thing is like I want to truly change a system. right? I want to see that within my lifetime. I think there's a lot of leaders and a lot of things that talk about, like systems change is generational, and we see it over hundreds of years. I'm too impatient for that personally, right? Like that's just not what I'm going to be on. And so for me, it's like that we actually change the systems that we were intending to change is just as clear as what my desire is.
Look, man, Daquan, I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for the work the work that you continue to do. I am thankful to be able to be in this conversation with you, and for all the people who have been watching. We got some questions from the crowd, so there's some folks who are interested in asking some questions. And so the first question that I have for you, Daquan, is why is it so hard to be who we are? Being that we have given so much to the world, yet we have to hide and be someone else.
I love that.
I love it too. That's a great question. I love that question.
That's a great question. So my answer to that, right, would be, I question if it's truly hard for us to be who we are, or rather, is it a different actor, a different person, a different entity that is making it hard for us to be making it harder for us to be who we are in that moment, right? Because I feel like there's a difference, right? I feel like most of us know who we are and we're good at that. I feel like really the question that I will point back to is like, no, like, why are they making it so hard for us to just walk in that room and be our genius selves? And then that would also be my answer, is that the reason why it's hard is because of those kind of different ways in which I think they force subtle and direct influences over what we can and cannot be, or feel that we can and cannot be, rather.
Something that you said, the power to just be able to be, right? The power to just be able to be, not have to be anyone else, but just to be yourself. There's such an extraordinary point that you just made there. So I thank you for that. And I got another question for you. How do you adapt to change your org without losing sight of your org mission?
Yeah, right. I think like the key thing that our team always does is we start with the purpose and the goal, right? We're an organization that we started off with college student chapters, right? And so originally We Thrive was college students teaching entrepreneurship through their schools. And I love that model because I'm a big believer in near-peer mentors, but we had to face the facts that it wasn't a sustainable model. The problem is your best students are going to leave in X years, right? They're going to leave. They're not there forever. So like your best team is for sure leaving. And that's a hard model to build stability around. Long story short, where we are now is more of an ed tech platform. We work through teachers and our own coaches, right? And that shift, I think the key thing that allowed us to actually amplify our impact was just getting very clear on our core differentiation that mattered to our youth, right? So for example, the number one thing that was important to our youth and for our impact was that youth created real companies. That was never to be compromised, right? One of the things that we saw is like, you know what, when you think about it like that, it doesn't matter who teaches it really, about the near peer, about the teacher, about the coach. Someone does need to teach it a little bit, but that's not as relevant as they get the real economic practice, right? Because we're closing racial wealth gaps. So I think that's what's helped us for us, is getting very clear on what are the parts of the model that cannot change in order for you to achieve your desired level of impact. And then a lot of things begin to shift once you get clear on what can and cannot change. And also just ask the young people. For us, it was young people, but may not be for you. For us, we just asked them and yeah, they came up and said, yo, we need an app I can download. It's going to feel like Duolingo, do the things, etc. And so we built that.
Thank you, Daquan. Thank you for being a brilliant leader. Thank you for being an amazing Echoing Green fellow and community member. And I'm continuously rooting for you. And I'm continuously excited for all things that you have coming in the future. So thank you for sharing your brilliance and your time. And I am going to pass this back to Tiffany. Tiffany, hello.
How long did you guys prep that Let Me Hype Tiffany up for?
There was no prep. This is all organic. This is
Yo, he set me up. You saw that, right?
Yeah, that was a setup.
There's organic love for you, Tiffany.
I appreciate it. Daquan, you should drop the link to the app in the chat.
100%.
You always got to promote, you got to tell them what you need and ask for what you want.
Exactly.
I was like, Brendan knows exactly what my answer to this question is going to be. I don't know why he's asking this question.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you both.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Daquan.
Thank you, guys. See you later. So thank you again to Brendan and Daquan on what was such an inspiring and motivating conversation. As you can see, Daquan, as I often say, can sell like a cockroach to anybody. So if you weren't inspired, tune into any other conversation Daquan has. He'll do it to you all the time. With that, I'm eager to invite our judges back to share the winners of our pitch competition. Are you guys here? I think so. Please turn on your cameras and we'll be able to bring you on stage to announce the winners. Ray, there we go. Harlan and Trella, welcome back. Welcome back.
Thanks, everyone. We deeply appreciate hearing all of your stories and your dedicated examples for change. You inspire us and you inspire our world to do and be better. And so I want to say that at the outset. And after very difficult conversations, we did arrive at the winners in the respective categories. And here they are. In economic justice, Bertula George Red with Acres for Change. In narrative change and representation, Renee Bracy Sherman with We Testify. And in youth development and empowerment, James Dold with Human Rights for Kids. We congratulate the winners, we congratulate all of the participants, and we extend our gratitude for you inviting us to listen to your stories and your arches of change.
I don't even want to ask for the piping hot tea of how that went down in the chat room. You could tell me later. But thank you so much for that and for serving as our judges this evening. I'm sure that was not an easy task. Thank you again. Incredible, incredible, incredible. Let them hear it in the chat, everyone. And congratulations to our 3 first place winners. Each of these leaders will receive $20,000. But remember, it's not over yet. It is now time for what we call the Viewer's Choice Award. All right, guys, remember that notepad? Remember that time you were crying? You had to go get your tissue? This is the time. This is where it gets fun. Tonight, you'll get a chance to choose one additional leader to receive $18,000. Remember, the category winners that just won, they're not eligible. Everyone else is eligible. So right now, I'm going to ask my colleagues to prepare a poll so we can get that started and sent over to you. In a moment, you should see a window pop up. There it goes, with a poll. I'm listing the 10 leaders and their organizations that are up for the award. Select your favorite leader and then click submit. All right, I think we've launched the poll.
Just like you. Tell that trick I don't like you. Ain't nothing to it. Real one. Ain't nothing to it. Boss. Ain't nothing to it. Real one. Ain't nothing to it. I boss. Ooh, real one. Boss.
Yeah. 100 million crib, 3 million watch, all facts, no cap, false. You not a boss, you got a boss. Getting jerked, that shit hurts, I take it personally. Rather work for the man than to work with me. Just so they could pretend they on my level, that shit is irking to me. Pride always goeth before the fall, almost certainly. It's disturbing what I gross. Survey says you're not even close. Everybody's bosses till it's time to pay for the office. To them invoices separate the men from the boys. Over here we measure success by how many people successful next to you. Here we say you broke if everybody is broke except for you. Bows.
Ain't nothing to it. Real one. Ain't nothing to it. Boss. Ain't nothing to it. Real
All right.
ain't nothing to it.
All right, but first of all, can we just give a round of applause in the chat for the playlist for this evening? On top of that and the pitches, I'm undone. All right, it is my pleasure to congratulate Joy Lindsay of Butterfly Dreams for taking home the 2021 Viewers' Choice Award. Come on, everybody. Congratulations, Joy. Well-deserved, well-deserved, well-deserved. Let's let her have it in the chat. And now it's sad that we have to come to a close. What an awesome evening we just had. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. A special thank you to our judges, Harlan, Ray, and Trella. But most importantly, thanks to the folks who presented to us. Here's the truth. There hasn't been a case where marginalized groups haven't led the way for change. And when systems try to place our community at the bottom, there's always a need for people that look like me and the people that look like on the screen to study power and to understand its vulnerability. So yes, we've had to study that power, but bigger than that, we have power. So what I leave our presenters with today is take agency, take up all that space, own your stories, share them boldly, share them loudly, and most importantly, don't you ever mute yourself or dim your light. For our audience, when the world tries to tell you we can't find leaders of color, call their bluff, because what you saw tonight were 13 leaders of color leading the way on work around race, equity, and justice. They are here, bold, loud, unapologetic, and quite frankly, they're not going anywhere. Because Black and brown folks, they've always believed in majestic ideas to change the world. I hope everyone watching is leaving as inspired as I am right now. From the pitches to the fireside chat with Daquan, tonight's event reminds us of the bold innovation taking place in the world right now. With these leaders at the forefront of reimagining the world, we can ensure that we're creating a future where everyone has equal opportunity and resources to thrive. So stay connected to Echoing Green. We have a ton of exciting things coming up through the end of this year and into next, so stay tuned. Subscribe to our newsletter and follow us at Echoing Green. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Stay safe, wear your mask, and have a good night.
Blue 3 in the morning on the West Side Highway, top down, baby. Motivation for me, the blueprint, baby. Is then telling me what I could not be.